Hey everyone, thank you very much for watching. Today we're going to be doing some front struts on a 2007 F150. It covers any of that generation. So we'll get started on that, go through some of the tips. There's some things that people say to do, some things that you can actually look at a little differently. We'll go through some of that as well. But other than that, we'll get started on that, so no more talking. Let's get right to it. Alright, so we're about to start the job now for the struts to do the front struts. For those who don't know, it's actually a fairly common issue for the struts, the springs particularly, to crack. It just happens. So this, if you have a F150 two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, expect that you're probably gonna have to do this at some point. So it's worth noting, of course, a few things. Number one, you're gonna want to spray everything down. That includes that nut right there, your tie rod connection right here. If you want, spray a little bit there, and then these three bolts is 1, 2, and then a third one back there, 3. You want to spray it down early before you start the job, so it gives it time to work in. So that's probably the first thing you want to do. Second thing to mention is that this video is covering a two-wheel drive 2007 F150. It doesn't have four-wheel drive, therefore it's missing a key component for some people, and that it doesn't have a front axle and CV shaft and everything, which normally would sit right in this gap right here, and normally it come in over and right over here. You don't have to worry about that on this car, but one thing you may want to look at now, according to Ford manuals and everything, you're actually going to be taking the CV shaft out. You don't necessarily have to do that. So kind of a recap on that. You normally have the CV shaft that is right over here. It hooks on with 6 bolts right around, and then there's normally the dust cap here with another bolt nut underneath, I should say. You take off the dust cap, take off the nut here, and then you would loosen those off here. Now, however, I will tell you that if you're really clever and careful with this, you don't even have to do that. Again, Ford manual says, because that's the recommended work, but you don't have to. You can actually turn this wheel of this here, the whole assembly, that way. Just turn it this way, over here, this way, so this part is facing outward, which you'll kind of need to do anyways to get to the back here. It does help. And by doing that, you're actually going to get access over here. There's normally a CV boot that would run here and go into the back, so that's what you want to really be cautious about. That's really what it's all about, so you be cautious with that. The second thing is, I have seen where it's been recommended to take this off right here and to take off your stabilizer link down here. There. I'm actually telling you, you don't need to do that. You actually can do this job without having to do either or. So you can actually leave the stabilizer link connected and leave the upper knuckle here connected. Also, you're going to want to put a jack stand, having the car jacked up, as you can see. So make sure you're jacking your car properly. We have it jacked up here on the front of the subframe, and then the stands here. Now the jack is no longer supporting it, it's just there as well. It's there just because that's where I jacked it and it's been dropped down. The stands are doing all the heavy lifting right now. That's just what you want to do, safety first. But we put another one under the control arm here, because if you don't do that, when you start loosening this off and taking this out, this is gonna drop, and when it drops, it's gonna put all the pressure on the top bolt up there, which makes it kind of difficult to pull out. So having this supported will actually assist you in getting everything out. Aside from that, the only thing is, having a compressor is an extreme asset. If you don't have to, you'd have to. This particular one here, it's torqued to 350 foot-pounds, and if you hook up your something to break it, like a breaker bar or something, you'll need a really long breaker bar to break 350 pounds, unless you're like a muscle man or something like that, right? Trust me, it's not going to happen. You want something to break it off, but having a compressor, your own personal compressor, will be quite useful, which we do have here. So we're going to get started now. It's really, like I said, pretty straightforward. We're going to be taking off this tie rod first, and then we're going to crack these out, crack those out, and then remove it out. So we're going to begin. First thing you're going to be doing is you're going to be loosening this. It's a 21 millimeter nut. As you can see, came off. Now, believe it or not, we did not pre-loosen this. That came off quite well. We've already done the other side actually, and both sides came off pretty good for the age and the condition of the vehicle. Hopefully you have this this smooth a ride as well, but of course you may have to use a torch to loosen the bolt or anything like that. Now it's worth noting that on the top here there's a 10 mil piece like that sticks out of the top, because as you took this out, as it reaches the top, it may start seizing out with the rust and so on. If that happens, then you're going to be using a 10 mil socket on the top, or a 10 mil wrench. Socket worked better for us, and you're going to loosen that as well. So keep that in mind. But as you can see, we're just going to loosen that right out. Now, while we work on that, it is worth noting too that depending on the condition of your tie rods, two things may happen. Number one, it may be seized within that knuckle there, in which case you'll have to get a hammer and gently hammer it to loosen it out. Luckily, we didn't have this problem on the other side, and hopefully we don't have this problem now. We'll find out in a minute. The second thing that may happen is because depending on the condition of your tie rods, again, relating back to that 10 mil at the top, it may also start spinning. And if it starts spinning, you'll also need a 10 mil socket to go at it. So we'll see what happens here. We're just going to loosen it a little more. So far, so good. As a tip, this would be also a good time to do an inspecting. Check out all your parts, check any other suspension components, make sure everything is in good order, check your brakes, everything as well. As you're here, and I imagine you won't be here often, it'll be a good time. Looks like so far so good. Now luckily this didn't spin. When we did the other one, it slipped right out of the knuckle immediately. And doing that, there was no tension to work with. So we actually had to use a 10 mil socket. In this case, we didn't have to use a 10 mil on the top because it came right out. Now we're gonna kind of hammer that bad boy out a bit. See? Now we put a block of wood. Oh, beauty, look at that, eh? We put a block of wood because you don't want to hammer it directly onto the top or any of the components itself. You could have, if you needed to, you could hammer on the knuckle over here, but you really don't. You want to use that as a last resort. As you saw what we just did there, we took a piece of wood, put it on top, hammered down, and that came right out. And then from here, what we're actually going to do to kind of keep this out of the way is we're going to bungee this. So as you can see, we're just going to go around right over here, and we're going to bring that right around. By the way, this is Tony.
What's up?
There we go. And then we put the nut on top to hold it in place. Don't screw it all the way, just enough. Just need to give some tension. So from there, let's move on. We're going to loosen the top bolts. Now, one thing that's not mentioned very often is one of the top bolts is up here. So as you can see, it's right over there. And we're going to go at that with a 15 mil socket. So we're going to get that on there. And be keeping the edge of the car. It's going to be a little bit of torquing. There we go. Once you get it though, it's going to come off nice. Now you don't want to take it off completely. You want to loosen it just enough that it's still holding in for the car, because you still need to work on some of the lower components. So once this is done, move down here. So now with these two, now you can see because of the fender over here, you really can't get a socket. It's a pain. You really can't unless you move the fender out. So we're going to go at it with a 15 mil wrench. Same idea here. Hopefully the condition will be good. So we're going to get that right on. There we go. Now, we so far have been quite lucky with how this has gone, but it is worth noting that if you encounter any problems, hopefully by spraying the lube on it, WD-40 or any similar lubricant, it'll help you with getting this job done. If not, you may even have to resort to a small torch to heat it up a bit, but we have been lucky thus far. So, same thing over here. You're gonna just loosen it, not remove them entirely, just enough though to hold it in place, but when you're ready, you can take them out with no problem. So here's the problem I was talking about here. So here we have our breaker bar coming along that's going to this nut here. Now again, because there's 350 foot-pounds of torque, even if we try and break it with a bar at the end, it's not going to come off easily. We're going to go do it now just to show you. So we're going to put a bar even at the end, and we're going to torque. And you can see, because again, you're talking a lot of pressure, we can go at it a lot. So we're going to take that off now, but just before we film and show you what we'll do with our compressor, just to kind of talk about it a little bit more. the thing to note there is that you could attach. Now, I'll be honest with you, the chance of that bolt breaking by too much pressure, not very likely. What you're really looking for though is not breaking your breaker bar. So if you have a good breaker bar and as much length as possible. Not everyone's going to have a compressor, I understand that. So the further out you are, the better leverage you can get. But that's the only way. Even with roughly, I don't know, what was that, 12, 14, about 20 inches of leverage, it still wasn't enough to crack that bolt. So what we will be doing though is be using our compressors. We do have access to one, so let's get to that. All right, so we're gonna go first on the outside. Now that's a 1 1/16. I know, a little bit of an odd number, but that's where we're gonna go. And we're just gonna put the gun as much as possible, just to loosen it out. That's really just to crack off any dirt, rust, anything like that. Then we're gonna go on the outside, which is a 30 mil. I'm just gonna help move this here, and everything will start. Yep. And that's it. There you go. Sorry about the compressor. I had to turn on to get a little bit of the pressure there, but you can see got that bad boy off. It's a big, huge nut. We have the nut off though. We got to get that bolt out. So all it is straight hammering it out. So we're just going to go ahead and apply some pressure right there. Tap it out. And you're going to see that bad boy is going to come right out. It's not about power in this case here. It's just about applying good solid taps right through. Of course, again, there's going to be a little bit of pressure on this because it's kind of a loaded unit. So you're going to get a little bit. So we're just going to get.
Don't try this at home.
Don't try this at home. You get a screwdriver or something. We're using our extension here, not the best, but you know we will do it. And you're just going to tap it through there. See? See all that corrosion, rust, anything that's in there. So all that's come out. So there we go. On to the next step. So now we got to remove the nuts. Now, if you remember, now that we have this down at the bottom, all completely out, it's only these three that are holding it in. So you just do these two here, 15 mils. You're just going to take them out with a wrench, one by one. And then remember, the other one is from the inside the engine bay, and it's with a socket. So as you can see, it's just coming out here. Just a little bit of elbow grease that you put into it. Nothing special, nothing fancy. You're just going to give it a go. It will come off, even with a little bit of rust. As long as you're careful and you just give it a go, it will come off, as you see there. Now, hopefully, if you bought a new set, you should be getting new bolts with this too. Or if you're buying, you want to make sure you are getting new bolts. It does help. Sorry, new nuts. What am I saying? So it's going to come off here. You can see that just screwed right off. There we go. Beauty. And it's just the same for the other side. I'm obviously not going to film the other side. You guys will get the idea. I'll give you a little bit on the socket, but really, that's all it is. We have the two bolt nuts out at the bottom. Those we took out with the wrenches. Now we're just going here with the socket back. And we're just going to wind that right out. Because everything was already loosened out already, that should be nice, pretty easy, straightforward, beautiful. Look at that. That bad boy just comes right off and you're good to go. Alright, so now once everything is released and all loose, it's just a matter of taking out the strut itself. Now, if you're lucky, and we're hoping we are, that this will just be able to pull right out, just maybe a little strength into it. It's good to have a hammer and a pry bar just in case, but we're going to give it a go now. So we're just going to, just grip at the bottom and just give it a good pull. And in this case here, it wouldn't go, so we're just going to get the pry bar and kind of shake it loose. The hammer is kind of a last resort. Really, the pry bar should hopefully get it going. And then once that's there, it's just a matter of pull out, and out she comes. Now for those, because you may catch you off guard, remember there is a level of weight to this thing. And even when you're prepared, and even if you hold the new ones, you may be shocked when you pull this out and you feel the weight associated to it. So keep that in mind as well, so to be prepared. But now that's it. As you can see, everything is out. We're just going to clean up some of the spots. I'll show you that, and then we move on to installation. So here you can see a comparison of three struts themselves. This is the one that we just pulled out of the passenger side. This is the one from the driver's side, and obviously this is the brand new one. I hope that's obvious. This is where I want to show you guys, and the brake. This is what happens. It often happens on the driver's side, occasionally passenger, often on the driver's side though. You can see it's broken, and over time the spring is warped and it's bent over. The strut's still straight. It's the spring that's bent, and this is quite a common issue. And you can even compare it to this here, which is the passenger side. It's saying no problems. This, of course, can create lots of issues. It's a safety hazard, alignment issues that can come up, suspension plate issues, all sorts of things. Even with the tire itself, you can have the tire can be angled at a wrong angle and you can scuff. Your camber will be off. All sorts of things can happen just from this here. So keep this in mind when you're looking at it. But the new ones here, this here, and there's no, I should say, there's no real rhyme or reason to why it happens. It happens often, but it's not known if it's a part issue, if it's something in manufacturing in the truck itself. Who knows? It happens a lot though. So now we're going to put the new ones in and go from there. Really what you're looking to sand is the contact points within itself. So you're going to be doing things like out here and in here. You're also going to be doing up here, as it tends to get a lot of rust and corrosion, as you can see up there. So you want to clean that up as best as you can. Now, as we have access to a compressor, we're also going to be using a blower. So it's, you know, something like this here. So once it's hooked up, then we can blow out a lot of the dust and the grime and the dirt as well. So that's all pretty straightforward. I don't know if you guys need to see. It's really just grabbing your sandpaper or wire brush and giving some elbow grease and just going out and getting as much corrosion as possible out of it. So that I'll leave that off. I'm not going to waste time showing that to you, but you get the idea. Installation is pretty much the reverse. As you can see, we've already cleaned everything up. We've got the strut already that had some stickers and stuff that's off. So we're going to go ahead and we just slide that into the top, right through. There you go. And if let's make sure. And you're going to check just to make sure that all the bolts have gone right through the holes at the top. And then right down here, you're going to go and put this in. Now you may notice that it's not going to go in. That's because, of course, the strut is brand new. It's all stiff, so you're going to have to pry that in a bit. So first thing we do is we're going to grab the pry bar. Here, 1 second. Now, I didn't have a pry bar that directly fits in there, so I'm just using this. I have a really heavy-duty screwdriver. We're going to go that in, but if you can have a pry bar that works, we're just going to put that in and we're going to kind of twist. It goes in kind of slanted too, so you got to kind of twist it. Then once it's twisted and straight right in there, we want it just so that both these pieces right here are kind of lined up. And then we're going to take our wood and a hammer. I'm going to just give it a few taps. So now you're going to get it in as far as you can, and once you get into a point, then you want to line it up through the hole. And we'll show you that in a sec, but right now we're just going to make sure, yeah, there we go, we're going to make sure we're just in a little bit more. Just need about a quarter of an inch, I think. And we're almost there. You can see the holes lining up. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so from here, you see, you're just trying to line that up so you go right through, because you want to be able to put that nut through. Once the nut fits, then you're all set. The thing with it, though, is doing this with one person is quite hard, but we're going to have Tony go with it here. He's got the pry bar through while he hammers the bolts, and you're all set. From there, so we're going to go and Loctite everything as our next step. So you just got to put a bead. So first off, you're doing it on the small little nuts here, and of course you're going to be doing it on the one big one there as well. So you're just going to put a little bead on the inside, so you can see what that looks like there. Because as you tighten, it's going to turn around within the nut itself, and you can see, I'm just going to put that right up there. Same thing here. And then of course the last one, just going up to the top. So from here now, we're going to start going right onto these. We've threaded the top already. I didn't bother to show you guys, it didn't really make sense to, kind of redundant, but you get the idea. Now these go to 35 foot-pounds. Again, it's a 15 mil socket, 35 foot-pounds. Now while Tony does that, it is worth noting that these ones here, it's substantially harder to do if you don't have anything that can do it, right? It's supposed to go to 35, but you've got this in the way. You can see it working in the background there. This makes it difficult to actually torque these. So we are not doing these to the 35. Instead, we're going to do that by the way we can gauge it. But if you can find a way, especially moving this inner panel or anything like that, or lifting this up and trying to get a ratchet in there, there's not really a lot of play to work with. But these are all 35s what they go to. You're going to Loctite this one as well. So again, it's a bigger nut. Same idea though, you just go right in and just apply some right on the inside, as you can see there. Just enough that when it goes in, it locks in. It's going to spread again on the bolt as it goes through. Now from there, as you can see below, just thread that right back on. It's going to go to a point. Again, it's pretty heavy metal stuff, so it's going to go to a point. Again, just make sure you're not cross-threading, and then we're just going to put our impact gun on, hold it in place, and just going to give it a little bit of a go. There, pretty much till the gun can't go anymore, and then that's that. Because the next thing, of course, is you got to give it the big guns. Let's go with that. Before we get started, I just want to talk a little bit about this and give you guys some options. This, as you can see, is our heavy-duty torque wrench. This one here, you need something that goes at least to 350 foot-pounds. As mentioned before, that one nut particularly, 350, which is where you want to go. Now, you could check and see with your local parts place. Some places may rent it, some not. They may also sell it, but that will be at quite the cost. They also have this thing called a torque multiplier, which works quite well. And essentially, let's just assume this is your regular breaker bar or anything like that. It's kind of like a cylindrical device that attaches right onto here, and then that would then go onto your socket, which then goes onto the nut itself. From there, basically you set the ratios and set how much pressure you need to have, and you can then use your regular breaker bar or anything to apply the 350 foot-pounds. That's a pretty good option if getting one of these is inaccessible, but this is really the way to go if you can get one. As you can see, this is quite big, but it will do the job we need it to do. So we're about to, as you can see, we've hooked up our torque wrench down onto the nut right there, and I'm applying the pressure over here. So we're going to go now up to 350 foot-pounds. It's already been set and everything. I'm just going to let that go a bit. Of course, 350, got to imagine that's quite a bit of force. There we go, that's the magic click you're looking for. We've now hit 350 foot-pounds, and that bolt is good to go. We're just gonna go and put the tie rod back in. So as you can see, we just turn our steering over, the whole steering assembly, put that right back into the knuckle. It's just a matter of lining it up, just making sure it's lined up the right way. Maybe even get a hammer and give it a little bit of a whack with the wood. There you go, right in. There, oh, came back out. That's okay. We get back right in there. You know how these things are. It helps, yeah, if we put the tie rod, there we go. Just line it up perfectly and then it'll go right in. Now we're going to go to 110 foot-pounds, but I will be remiss to tell you that it is specifically 111 foot-pounds. Although I don't see the reason to go to that extra one. You guys may hate me for that, I don't care. Yeah, so we're going to just tighten that up. And then after that, we'll take our torque wrench and we're going to go up to 110 foot-pounds. You can see this has started spinning. You can see right in here. It's spinning, it got a little bit tight. So remember I was telling you guys earlier about the 10 mil, so we're going to put that on top. We'll put this through, and then we're going to put our 10 mil socket right on the top there. And of course there's going to be a little bit of corrosion and stuff, so keep that in mind. You may have to hit it in ever so slightly. And then we're going to get that on, and then we're going to go. As you can see now, while he's tightening, it's no longer spinning in here. So now that's tightening up as it should, and you can start seeing this go up. It's just a matter of putting the wheel back on, which we're going to do here now. So you just lift that up, line it up to the bolts. It's got some pretty good weight to that wheel, so keep that in mind itself. No matter which one you have, even from these ones here, which is the 17s up to the higher end ones, they've always got some good weight to them. Once you get that on, it's just a matter of just hold it in place. You could use your knee or feet or anything like that, depending on how you're sitting. And we're just going to put some anti-seize right onto the bolts. This definitely helps with if you ever take these off in the future. It'll make it just that much easier to do. Now these torque up to 150 foot-pounds, so keep that in mind when you're doing it. Most regular torque wrenches can do that. You don't need the heavy-duty one. A regular torque wrench will do that just fine. So now after you get the anti-seize on, you're going to put the bolts on. Now when you're doing this part here, there's no real way to do it, because it's really when you do the tightening that it really matters. This is just, we're going to go hand tight. We're going to get our impact gun. We're just going to zip it on. Now if you're going to use the impact gun, you're going to want to go across, because the impact gun will go beyond hand tight. Going hand tight by hand doesn't really matter. In this case here, we did the star pattern, which is, you start off on 1, doesn't matter which one, any one. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you're doing a star, right? This is important to make sure the wheel goes on straight on, as opposed to going, because it can actually bolt in. If you do it like around in a circle, it can bolt in an angle, and if you do that, then of course it'll affect your handling, and there could be safety issues with that as well. So now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and torque it up to 150 foot-pounds. So all that is we set our torque wrench to the 150. Let's get a good view there. There you go. And then we just go straight onto it. And in case you've never used a torque wrench before, it's just a matter of tightening it up, and you'll hear the click. You see that click? That's your 150 foot-pounds as you need it. Then you just go again across in a star pattern. And when you've done all 6, you just want to go over them one more time, just to make sure you get that final click. So we got our one more, and then you're just going to go over them one last time, just to make sure you get that immediate click. And then you just put your cap on, which I'll show you here, because, you know, why not? Punch it in, and guys, that's it. You're good to go. Thank you very much for watching my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Comment as well if you have any tips, anything you want to let us know on. Make sure to do that as well. But if you like and subscribe, that lets me know you guys are enjoying what I'm doing, so don't forget to do that. Other than that, I'll catch you next video.